Hello, everyone. Welcome to Zen and Fanfics. Today we are featuring What If Deku's Quirk Shocked the Pokemon World? The story is written by youngposum on fanfiction.net. Now let's dive into the story. Beep, 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 beep. The irritating noise of a heart monitor woke him up. Despite this, he lay there, motionless. His head was throbbing at the moment. Muscular must have gotten him worse than he thought. He slowly stretched as he looked around the room. It was what anyone would have guessed a hospital room would have looked like. Off-white walls, the smell of medicine and other chemicals, along with a couple chairs in the corner surrounding a table. After a moment of taking in the room, he realizes he should probably notify a nurse of his waking. It would be nice to catch up on the current situation. Kota was safe and Baku. OHSHD they were after Bakugo. In his panic, he starts repeatedly smashing the button on his hospital bed to call the nurse. It took 30 seconds, but a group of medical professionals rushed into the room, followed by a walking. What exactly is that? A couple of pink rotund creatures with stubby limbs, 3 pink hair-like growths on either side of its head, and an egg pouch. And a couple plants. A blue orb thing with legs and no arms, accompanied by 3 leaves on its head, along with a green thing with a skirt of leaves and flowers on its head. The hell is going on? Too deep in shock, thoughts, and still feeling groggy from sleep, he didn't notice the green plant with flowers on its head blow some strange powder on him. It took only a moment before he began wavering in place and fell back onto the bed. And just like that, he was asleep. The doctors relaxed a bit before one of pink-haired doctors started barking orders to the others. Silena and Alex, monitor his vitals and check for anything strange about him. The rest of you go about your previous business. I'll notify Surge that the boy awoke. He'll be here shortly. The pink-haired doctor watched as the others began to go about their business before walking out of the room and pulling out her phone. Moving into a secluded room, she quickly dialed the city's gym leader. After a second of ringing, the call was accepted and a gruff voice was heard from the other side. Joy, what did you want? Surge, the boy woke up a couple minutes ago. He was in a panic state, so we put him back under with sleep powder. So he woke up, huh? I'll be there in half an hour. I gotta finish this battle against this baby. She heard an indignant hey from the other end before the call ended. She shook her head in exasperation. It would kill the man to act a bit less antagonistic towards challengers. Izuku was having a nice rest. Or he was until a strong smell made itself no way too close to his nose. His eyes snapped open as he quickly sat up in bed, noticing the 2 people occupying the chairs to the left of him. A pink-haired woman and a giant blonde man. In just a few seconds, he had gathered everything he could about them, as much as their body language and general demeanor could tell him at least. He recognized the pink-haired lady as a doctor that he had seen before being put back under. The blonde man, however, was new. He had his hair cut short and spiky, while wearing what appeared to be a military-esque uniform. An unzipped camo jacket over a black tank top, and camo pants followed by combat boots. He noticed the man pulling back a small bottle away from his face. Guessing it to be smelling salts, he didn't comment on it and rubbed his nose, trying to get rid of the smell. His attention snapped to the doctor as she addressed him. Sorry about that. I know it wasn't pleasant, but it's hard to wake someone from hypnosis regularly. She sounded apologetic and bowed her head forward in apology. He tried to assure her it was fine. Key word, he tried. He started having a coughing fit, only now realizing how sore his throat was. It felt like the time he had eaten sand when little. The blonde man laughed at his plight and beat the nurse to an explanation. Relax, kid. You've been asleep for. How long was it again, Joy? Was it 3 or 4 days? He looked over to the doctor with a raised eyebrow as she sighed in exasperation. It was 3 days, Lieutenant Surge. Come on, he drawled. I've asked you multiple times to call me Surge, Joy, not Lieutenant. But anyhow, ya kid, you've been out for a couple days. We found you out back in the forest after a spike of psychic energy was sensed outside. He seemed to collect himself for a minute before letting out a breath. Kid, the man now dubbed Surge looked at him with a serious expression marrying his features. I'm going to need you to be completely transparent with me. His previously laid-back and playful nature was gone, replaced by a face of seriousness and business. "How did you get that injured?" "You came in with both arms broken, the bones almost completely shattered. You were covered in scrapes and bruises, along with a few fractured ribs." "Oh, I almost forgot about the concussion. According to Joy, you had a pretty bad one." He took a moment to catch his breath before continuing. "I haven't seen anything this bad since the last time I entered skirmish. War. Not really sure what to call that little SHD show I was involved in a couple years ago. The DMN thing ended in a weak give or take." He was nudged in his side by Joy, causing him to refocus on his current task. "Getting off topic, kid. BB dash. Anyways, tell us everything you remember about your little incident." He finished, interlocking his fingers and leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees. As he opened his mouth to try and speak, he felt a light tap on his right arm. Turning his head, he locked eyes with the pink thing. Animal, whatever it was, holding a tray with a glass of water and some other nourishment. Glancing back to the doctor and receiving a nod and gentle smile, he took the glass of water and downed it all in a gulp. Wiping the excess water from around his mouth, he turned back to the pink thing to offer his thanks. Thank KS. His probing for a name proved fruitful when the thing cheerfully called out Chansey. He nodded and turned back to Joy and the man named Surge. He then explained everything. The training camp, the attack, defending Koda from Muscular, and finding out they were going after Bakugo. They didn't interrupt, they didn't comment, they stared at him with a blank expression, even when he finished. It was kind of unnerving, to be honest. Finally, the blonde man spoke. "You're F with me, right, kid?" He winced when Joy smacked him in the side and reprimanded him for his language. "I'll let the other few times slide because I know how you are, but watch your tone around the boy." She seemed exasperated, as if she has had this conversation many times. Deciding to try and rescue the man, he spoke. It's fine if he curses. I have a FR friend that curses often. I'm used to it." Surge jumped at the opportunity to get out of trouble and slapped the kid's shoulder. He winced when he heard the kid yelp with pain and saw Joy's glare fix on him. "My bad, kid. But anyways, the boy's fine with my language. He's a big kid, see?" He quickly lowered his frame and whispered to Izuku behind his hand. "Wait, how old are you, kid?" "C16, sir." He stuttered out, also whispering. "Call me Surge, kid." He whispered back before switching back to his normal tone. "And don't worry, Joy. I checked, he's 16. He is old enough to hear naughty words." He cracked a grin when he saw her huff and roll her eyes. The woman cleared her throat to get their attention. Getting back on track. "Your story does sound quite far-fetched." Realizing her attempt at trying to gather his name, he answered, "Izuku Midoriya. Your story does sound far-fetched, Izuku. Superpowers, heroes, hero school. Sounds like something out of manga. Are you sure you weren't under the influence of anything?" Her face morphed into a strict motherly expression when she uttered those last words. Ignoring Surge's snickering, far-fetched, he gulped and quickly answered Joy's insinuation. "And no. I wouldn't do anything like that." Upon her questioning look and raised eyebrow, he continued, honest." She nodded, relented. "I'm aware. Your BLD test results were clean, and you don't seem the type to do anything along those lines, Izuku. Maybe it was some form of mental influence, hypnosis, or illusions, or something of the like." He blushed and responded, I wasn't you under the influence of anything." Surge raised his brow and questioned his red face and stiff body language. "The hell's up with you, kid? All she said was your name. Are you that shy?" He asked with disbelief. This kid was unbelievable. BB back home, people address others by their F family names. You, unless the P people in question are CC close. He managed to stutter out. Surge looked confused for a second. "Family name. The hell do, OHH. You mean last name?" He saw Izuku give a nod. Well, that's a problem for you. Everyone calls each other, but they're going to have to get used to that quick." Surge stood up a second after he finished and reached for a ball that was strapped to his waist. Izuku tilted his head to the side as he just now noticed that Joy had a similar belt wrapped around her waist. His eyes widened when he saw Surge click a button and witness the ball enlarge. His mouth fell open shortly after when he saw a white light emerge from the ball and saw a yellow thing materialize from within the light. It was about 5 feet give or take, with triangular ears and a large pointed nose. It appeared to have no mouth and had a collar of white fur around its neck, and appeared to be holding a pendulum in its right hand. The rest of its body appeared humanoid aside from its feet, which end in 3 toes. "Sup, Hypno, I need a favor done. Check the kid for any kind of mental manipulation. When you're done, check if the kid was lying to us about his story." Surge ordered the thing, now dubbed Hypno, as Joy turned towards Izuku. "Hey Izuku, we're going to be using Hypno's psychic abilities to check if you were either manipulated or lying. Just follow the pendulum, and it'll be over in a minute or 2. She kindly explained what was going to happen to him, eliciting a nod of acceptance from him as he began to stare intently at the pendulum. After 10 seconds give or take, they saw his eyes droop and his posture slouch, revealing he was now under Hypno's control. It took another minute or so after Hypno's eyes started glowing blue and his hand was placed on Izuku's head. When he stopped, he turned and nodded towards the adults as Izuku slowly began stirring. He was snapped awake when Surge slapped his arm, causing the boy to sit up straight and instinctively grab his arm where he was hit. Ignoring Joy's glare, he began asking about Hypno's search. "So you got the answers right?" Hino nodded. "Good. So is he manipulated or nah?" A shake of the head met his question this time. "Huh, guess I'm wrong. So is he telling the truth, or is he bat SHD insane?" Another nod. Surge stared for a moment. "So, you're telling me," he pointed at himself in a display of extravagant overemphasization, receiving another nod, "that Izuku is telling the truth about superpowers and such, which in turn means he's from a completely different universe than us." He received another nod. He sat down, stupefied, as Joy just stared wide-eyed at him. Even Hypno seemed a bit lost and looked at him curiously. The silence was broken as Chansey walked in again with an overexcited Chansey. Once again, Chansey stopped her doings and looked around before seeming to engage in conversation with Hypno. "Chansey?" she asked curiously. "Hip," he easily responded, still carrying a confused look on his face. Chansey asked, confused. "No," he responded with a nod of his head. They only speak through variations of their names." He was confused about why they were doing such, but figured the gist of it when Chansey also stared at him with a mixture of amazement and confusion. Then he registered what Surge had said. A different universe. His eyes snapping over, and as panic spread throughout his face, he quickly tried to confirm what he had heard. "Wait. What do you mean a different universe? This is a sick joke, RRI. He looked at them hopefully, waiting for them to burst out laughing at the cruel joke and reassure him his family and friends were outside his room, waiting to meet him. He waited, but he was met with Surge looking at him with pity and Joy averting her gaze. A desperate smile spread across his face as tears started to well in his eyes. "Why you're kidding, all right? Why you're all just messenger with me, right? Please just say you're messing with me." Chansey just walked up to him and gently caressed his hand. Joy moved to sit on the edge of his bed and hugged him, while Surge and Hypno offered apologetic looks. They stayed with him until he finally went to sleep, exhausted from crying. Joy sent Chansey to help around in her place, having her promise to keep quiet about the current situation, while Surge recalled Hypno. They made their way to Joy's office in relative silence, not speaking till they arrived. Once they did, they locked the door and met each other's gazes. Surge was the first to speak. "Well, that's some crazy SHD. Being shot off to another world, essentially losing everyone you know. Wonder if it was due to the alien things or the Sinnoh trio." He ran his hand through his hair as he still worked to process the day's events. "They're called Ultra Beasts, Surge. What should we do about this?" She looked at him for guidance. "I say we just tell the higher-ups and let them do as they will. Not much we can do." He just shrugged his shoulders, not really caring what happened. "I don't think that's a good idea. The last time someone came through an ultra wormhole, they were basically indoctrinated by the Ether Foundation. According to what you told me, They were sent on constant missions to ultraspace, eventually resulting in their death. Surge stared at her with wide eyes. I kind of forgot about all that CRP. SHD. What are we going to do now? The only other thing I can think of is Oak. He owes me a favor for letting him study my electivire. Maybe he could pull some strings or something for the kid. Joy seemed to ponder the idea before nodding. I'd say that's the best we can do. Oak can help us create some ID for the kid, and Oak being involved might scare off some of the more shady people. Okay, I guess that this is settled. I'm going to go back to the gym and call him about it. If he agrees, I'll let you know tomorrow. Today's been a mind F. I've only heard of this thing happening once or twice with people from other dimensions or time periods of our world. You know, with Pokemon and SHD. Never from other places. He groaned as Joy nodded along. SHD, man. I'm going to need a drink after I'm done with this SHD. Joy looked at the man with pity. Surge, it's only 4 in the afternoon. Shut up. He whined. Don't remind me. I still got to battle some babies at the gym. SHD. Oh well, I'm going to leave right now. See you tomorrow, Joy. She waved goodbye as he walked out her office. She watched him leave, then went over to her desk and sat down in the chair, laying her head on the desk. This week's going to be stressful, isn't it? Izuku awoke to Chansey, shaking him awake. The little pink ball of energy had her little nurse's hat on and had a tray holding his breakfast on the bedside table. Sitting up, he rubbed the sleep from his, before thanking Chansey for bringing him breakfast. Upon taking a look, he noticed it appeared to be a simple meal. Oatmeal with a side of fruits, some toast, some granola, and a glass of water and juice. Presumably orange juice. Chansey waved goodbye as she quickly made her way out of the room. He stared at the door as he went over yesterday's events. Apparently, he was in a different world. One similar to his, judging by the fact they understood his language, but completely different at the same time. These people didn't have quirks. They were all powerless, like he had once been. And there had been those things, he wasn't sure what to call them. At first he had thought that they were some mutant-type quirks, but after a closer look, he knew they weren't. He didn't know how, but he could just feel that they weren't mutant quirks, that they weren't human. He had tried to ignore the feeling at first, push that nagging sensation down at first, but what he observed only proved that feeling more valid. They seemed to be treated like pets in a way. Not exactly the same, but not too different either. There was more respect involved, like what would be expected when talking to a person, but still talked down to in a way. He silently continued his ponderings as he subconsciously ate spoonfuls of his oatmeal. He only realized he was done when his mouth was met with an empty spoon. Huh, guess I was hungrier than I thought. You should be hungrier. You missed dinner last night. A voice came from the doorway. He yelped out and jumped, knocking the fruits and the glass of juice onto the floor, breaking the 2 dishes. He quickly turned back to the voice, seeing an apologetic wince on the old man's face as he looked at the broken bowl and cup on the floor. I apologize for that. It wasn't my intention to scare you. That's on me. The older man offered a hand as carefully stepped around the glass towards him. Hello, Izuku. I'm Samuel Oak, often referred to as Professor Oak. He offered a hand in his direction with an amused smile. Although I guess you wouldn't know that due to your situation now, would you? Don't worry too much about it. I have a couple suggestions on how to deal with the problem, if you'll hear me out. Izuku quickly nodded along and shook his hand. And nice to meet you, sir. IAP-. He was quickly cut off by the old man, Professor Oak. Ah, please call me Oak. Sir isn't needed. All right, I mean Professor Oak. A tinge of red made its way up to his cheeks. Professor Oak sighed. That's the best I'm going to get out of you, isn't it? He was met with a nod. Good enough. Also, hello, dear. He spoke once more, confusing Izuku. However, upon closer inspection, he noticed Chansey with a broom and dustpan picking up the remnants of his dropped breakfast. Sorry, Chansey. I didn't mean to de-drop the food. He cringed at her light glare. Luckily, Oak came to his rescue. It isn't completely his fault, Chansey. I startled him out of his thoughts. Chansey held Oak's gaze for a moment before sighing and looking away. She finished picking up the fallen food and made her way out with a final subdued goodbye. Chan, after she left, the conversation started up again. As I was saying, the first is a given. You need to learn and study about this world. Judging by your reactions to Chansey and Story, you don't have a clue what Pokemon are. He was met with a shake of Izuku's head. He shook his head with a little smile. All right, how do I explain this? Pokemon are creatures that are capable of otherworldly feats of power and strength. Their capabilities range from caterpillars and flopping fish on the low end to gods capable of altering space and time on the high end of the spectrum. He chuckled when he saw Izuku's reaction. He was nodding his head along until he heard the last bit. His mouth dropped, and his eyes widened in shock and terror. Shakily recollecting himself, he asked a question that he had realized might be a possibility. Is it possible that I might be here due to their intervention? He nervously rubbed his right hand as he looked towards Oak. He responded after a moment of thought. We're not completely sure, to be honest. We haven't received any energy readings of ultra wormholes. He noticed Izuku's inquisitive look and answered his unsaid question. Ultra wormholes are tears in reality, presumably connecting to other dimensions that could be created by creatures known as beasts. Yes, they are still Pokemon. Although it is rare, there have been a few cases where people from alternate realities have fallen through into our world. Oak paused, bringing his arm to his chin and tapping it lightly in thought. I think the last recorded case was around 13 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Although, there hasn't been a case where someone has fallen from a completely different dimension, which implies a sort of multiverse or a catastrophic event, exterminating Pokemon from your world. Either one is too troublesome to think about. They both paused for a minute at that thought. Not too long after, Oak started talking again. Getting back on track, the easiest way to raise your chances of going home is to seek out these beings. He noticed Izuku shiver at the thought of having to seek out pseudo-gods. You'll have to find these Pokemon and hope they take pity upon you. Izuku started tuning Oak out after his last statement. How is he supposed to find a god in a world he's new to? His breathing began to quicken. Would they help him? Or would they smite him for being an annoyance? His breathing became raged. How would he even begin searching for them? How? How would he get back home? Kook. Izuku, calm down. Control your breathing. In and out. In and out. Izuku was snapped out of his spiral by Oak, standing up and leaning over in front of him, holding his shoulders. He massaged his chest once he began winding down from his panic attack. His head snapped up when he heard Oak's embarrassed chuckle. I apologize for causing that. In hindsight, I should have begun with something lighter. Traveling around might cause some issues, however. While you can travel to other regions without being a Pokemon trainer, it often requires a lot of money to fund trips to different regions. Oak cringed at the thought of the cost of travel. Being a trainer would not only help curb the cost of such expenses, but also help provide an avenue of defense for your person. As a trainer, you're allowed to carry a team of 6 Pokemon on your person at a time. These Pokemon will grow with your assistance, growing more powerful and skilled under your command. Oak paused as he made sure Izuku was still listening. However, doing such things requires time. In the meantime, you'll be under Surge's care. The blonde man from yesterday, in case you forgot. Surge is going to be looking after me. His stutter gone in place of surprise. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Not even 3 seconds after those words left his mouth, Surge stumbled into the room, head in his left hand and leaning against the wall. Oh God, my head, my bad. I woke up late. Alarm didn't go off, plus the hangover made it worse. His word came out slightly slurred, sighing at Surge's display, shaking his head. I did warn you not to go overboard with the drinks. You agreed to restrain yourself. Obviously, you didn't follow through. He finished with a stern look marring his face as he had his arms crossed across his chest. Yeah. Surge waved his lecture off. I don't need to hear your lecture, Professor. This headache is already killing me. I don't need to listen to you drone on. He hugged the wall, still holding his head, and made his way to the nearest seat. Oak sighed once more. I understand this isn't the best first impression. Second, Surge groaned out. Second impression, but believe me, he is actually quite competent. Or at least when he is serious. He shook his head in disapproval. Anyways, I'll have to get going. The paperwork for your information isn't going to finish itself. I'll email any additional information I need to complete your paperwork. I'll expect him to consult you for the necessary information. Have a good day. He nodded respectfully before making his way out the door. After a moment, he returned to the room, looking a little embarrassed. Sorry, I don't mean to be intrusive, but do you mind if I see, what did you call again? Quirk, Izuku suggested. Oak snapped his finger. Yes, that. From the perspective of a researcher, this is an amazing phenomenon to witness. If you would please show me a little of your quirk, I would be grateful for the opportunity. He bowed his head a little at his request. Why, yeah, I see could show you. It's the least I could do to thank you for your help. Izuku stuttered out. He concentrated for a second before his veins began glowing a light red underneath his skin. In response to his power activating, thin sparks of electricity began emitting from his body, spreading over and around him to eventually cover his form. Both the professor and lieutenant stood in quite amazement at the display. They watched the green sparks dancing across his form, light cracks from said electricity echoing in the room as Izuku deactivated his quirk. They witnessed the red veins and sparks of green energy slowly fade and flicker away. That, wow. That's amazing. Oak managed to get out in his shock. What you're a quirk do, kid? Surge questioned while taking off the sunglasses on his face, showing the pronounced eye bags on his face. Well, my Q quirk is super strength. Or more accurately, it enhances my physical stats. My durability, strength, agility, speed, reaction time, those kinds of things. Although, I am not able to use it at 100%. I have to limit myself to around 5%, otherwise I begin to break bones. Izuku's stutter slowly began to disappear as he began explaining his quirk to his audience. He shrunk in on himself when he noticed their enrapture in his explanation. Well, thanks for the little lesson, but I'm afraid I must get going now. I wish you luck on further mastery of your quirk. Oak bowed his head again and made his way out the room. An awkward silence prevailed between Surge and Izuku for a moment before the blonde broke the silence. So your quirk is a physical enhancer? He asked with a strange gleam in his eyes. Why, yeah. Why do you ask? Izuku had a sinking feeling in his gut. So you're probably not strong enough to handle the full power then. Huh. His suspicions were confirmed when he saw Izuku nod his head. He grinned a bit at the answer. He seemed eager for something. A little too eager for Izuku's tastes. You also say you're training to be a hero. Don't worry about falling behind your buddies. I'll keep you up to scuff. I will make you strong under my care. Izuku's gut feeling began going haywire. I admit, I won't be the best to help with your superpower there, but I'll make you the best hand-to-hand combatant in your group. After all, the lieutenant in my title isn't just for show. A menacing grin spread across his face. As he got up to stand, he patted Izuku's leg. You better enjoy your time in the hospital right now, 'cause you're going to be in hell with me. As he stood and walked away without a hitch in his step, he turned to Izuku. Also, did you really think I'd show up sloshed to a hospital? A light tinge of pink appeared on Izuku's cheeks at the statement. I was just with you. He grimaced and shook his head. But this hangover I got is killing me right now. Maybe I can find Chansey on the way out for some help. He began thinking out loud on his way out of the room, waving behind him in farewell. Izuku could only stare at the doorway. What's with his luck and crazy blondes? His stay at the hospital ended quicker than he would have thought. Their medical technology and healing moves were far more advanced and efficient than most of the healing quirks back home. But from his time in the hospital, the books he read pretty much explained the reason for it. People use their teams of Pokemon to battle another person's team for sport. As expected, injuries happen in most battles, which led to medical technology naturally becoming more advanced to more efficiently deal with the influx of Pokemon injuries. His time in the hospital also helped him gauge where Pokemon stood against pro heroes. The more common and often overlooked Pokemon in this world were on average strong enough to compete with most mid to low-tier pro heroes. Just the thought of a big rat or butterfly beating a hero like Death Arms brought a smile to his face. The thought of his home not only brought nostalgia, but pain. With an empty feeling in his chest and his eyes watering, he pushed it down. He needed to stay strong, smile in the face of any negative feelings. Just like All Might. Honestly, when he heard them talking about a gym, He didn't expect it to be double the size of the UA gym. The electric gym was massive, carrying everything from housing units for gym trainers to battlegrounds and a stadium-like battlegrounds, often reserved for more important and bigger fights. And that's where he was the day after being released from the hospital. Surge thought it would be a good idea to introduce him to more Pokemon. Therefore, he was now meeting the gym leader's team. In front of him stood a team of 6 Pokemon, standing confidently and observing him. Electivire, Electrode, Magnezone, Raichu, Golem, and Jolteon. These were the names Surge listed off, pointing to each one as he did. Surge's whole gimmick was using Pokemon who mainly used electric-type energy. They all looked powerful, far more powerful than most heroes. And to be honest, that thought scared him, terrified him. Surge, noticing his expression, couldn't help but grin. His Raichu shot him a look, and he sighed before heading to comfort Izuku. The little exchange went unnoticed by the teenage boy. "Relax, kid. They aren't going to kill you." Despite his reassurance, Izuku couldn't help but feel a tinge of annoyance at Surge's subtle snort of amusement. Electivire, one of the 2 most powerful Pokemon on his team, his Electivire stepped forward, his hand extended out in a handshake. He couldn't help the little smile that spread across his face. It was funny seeing such a strong and powerful Pokemon act cordial and use human mannerisms. He responded by grasping the Pokemon's hand and shaking it. "Hello, Electivire. I'm Izuku, and nice to meet you." The Electivire nodded in response before stepping back, allowing some of his teammates to also greet the boys. After their impromptu greetings, Surge cut into the interaction to get back on track. Clearing his throat, he spoke after getting their attention. "All right, now that you're all done saying hello and whatever else, let's get to business." He turned and locked eyes with the verdant teen before continuing. "We're going to need to get some SHD settled out first things first. We need to get chopped to date on most things Pokemon." He paused for a second, wondering where the hell the kid pulled out a notebook from before continuing. "If you're going to be living here for a while, you're going to need to blend in. If you don't know jack SHD about Pokemon, you'll either seem retarded or garner suspicion. Lucky for us, Oak gave me some SHD to help you out." He paused before turning to his left and moving over to a bench, grabbing a folder and tossing it over. Izuku caught the object before asking about it. "What's in here? Open it and find out." Shrugging, he opened the folder and began reading. "Pokemon. Everything you need to know. Pokemon are creatures that we share the world with. Each of these Pokemon is able to HRNSS the energy and..." Looking up to Surge, he spoke his thoughts aloud. "So, this is going to be what I use to be blend in. Jay, just study and I'm good?" he asked, tilting his head. Surge nodded while taking a seat. "Yeah, that's pretty much it. Go at least familiarize yourself with the basics, then come get me when you do." He got up and walked over to his team. "Go do what you're supposed to do. I'll get your men food ready," Surge called over his back while making his way out of the training room. His team each nodded before separating to do their own things. Izuku had spent the rest of the day trying to commit the type chart to his memory. Doing so was fairly easy in comparison to the work had him deal with. It was just a matter of memorization, nothing more, nothing less. His mistake was thinking all of this would be this easy. Obviously, he had overlooked one major part of it: the 1,000 Pokemon. It would take forever to study and memorize some of them, let alone all. Luckily, he didn't need to do that yet. He only really needed to know this region, Kanto. Yeah, Kanto. He just needed to learn Kanto at the moment. If anything, a little bit of the neighboring region's Pokemon would prove beneficial as well, considering both regions are only separated by a mountain. Luckily, he still had time. He had time to learn and plan. And when he was ready, he would go and find his way home. The next day threw him for a loop. Yes, while he did expect to get some tutoring from Surge, he didn't expect the man to help him with his physical conditioning too. At the moment, Surge was just listening to him ramble on about his abilities, trying to form an idea of where he was at. "So, what you're saying is that you have no formal combat training, can only use about 5% of your power more or less, and have confidence and overthinking issues." Izuku shrunk a little under each observation Surge stated. Oh, why yes, sir. He nodded meekly, embarrassed at his situation. The hell are they teaching you at that hero school of yours? He roared, throwing his hands in the air. They're a bunch of dumbass for not giving you any lessons on close combat or anything like that. What about tactics? Are they teaching you anything? He felt a pang of anger as he insulted the heroes who inspired him, the heroes who saved him. They did actually teach us a bit of tactics, and they were helping us get into more physical shape and improve our quirks before any actual combat. Surge snorted at Izuku's defense of the teachers. That's stupid. The DMN BSDRDS could have used the combat training to buff the kids up a bit. Then they know how to fight and are physically stronger. Everyone wins. He exclaimed, his arms out in a display of bravado. Izuku cringed upon hearing his reasoning. He didn't like that Surge was actually making very valid points against the heroes. It annoyed him, but he couldn't exactly dispute what Surge said. As he opened his mouth to speak, Surge spoke over him, forcing him to listen. All right, listen, kid. I can see that look on your face. Your mind ain't changing anytime soon. Let's forget about this for now and get you started. The grin on his face and his calling a Pokemon put him on edge. All right, this guy here is Electabuzz. Surge paused to let the Pokemon give an over-exaggerated greeting before continuing. This guy here is pretty good at fighting close quarters. He cringed as his Pokemon let out a yell of agreement close to his ear. F-O-F-F, idiot. He backed away after punching his Pokemon's arm. F, idiot. That SHD hurts. He whined, rubbing his ear. Never should have taught you, Screech. NYWAYS, as I was saying before being rudely cut off. He glared at his embarrassed Electabuzz. This guy here is on par with fighting types at close quarters. He will be sparring with you, and I will be giving you advice on whatever you F up on. He nodded and stood there waiting for Surge to continue. He did not, in fact, continue. They stared at each other for another 10 seconds before Surge sighed and rubbed his eyebrows. I meant like right now. Back up a bit, then we'll start when I say go. Izuku's cheeks colored red as he embarrassedly stumbled away. Sorry, sir. Once he had backed away significantly, he began to analyze his opponent's stocky build. He stood at around 4 feet, 9 inches to 5 feet, and was thin and muscular. 3. He was an electric type 2, if we're following Surge's trend. 2. The electricity was going to be a problem. He didn't have any powerful long-range options, and close range was going to be a no-go. 1. Maybe he could play defensively. Go! And he looked to be pretty fast, judging by the wall weight. OHSHD. He had barely any time to jump to the side to avoid getting rammed into by the Pokemon. He was given no rest, however, when he quickly spun on his heel, his left fist glowing with an orange-brownish energy as he swung sideways towards him. He managed to barely duck under it, feeling the slight gust of wind it created shifting his hair as he activated full cowling. Electabuzz froze in shock and confusion upon seeing Izuku's form get bathed in green energy. Electabuzz allowed an opportunity to slip when he froze in shock. Izuku didn't let him slip. He took action, sending a jab into the Pokemon's stomach, quickly followed by a hook into his chest, earning a grunt of pain from the Pokemon as he backed up. He let out a breath as he met Electabuzz's eyes. He couldn't help the excited grin spread across his face. It has been a while since he had a simple spar. He couldn't hold back his laugh as Electabuzz yelled and began waving his arms around in joy. His smile dropped slightly when he saw Electabuzz seem to change. His eyes narrowed, his body posture became more tense, and his grin seemed to grow a little more excited. He heard Surge call for him and dropped his guard to listen to him speak. The big grin on his face served to unnerve him. Careful. You're getting Electabuzz excited. He fights a bit dirty when he does. Also, who said you're done with the fight? Turn back around. As soon as the last words left Surge's mouth, he felt fear upon realizing his mistake. Turning back, it was already too late. Electabuzz was already in front of him, shrouded in a mist of white energy and his fist glowing a burnt brown color. As his opponent's fist met his cheek, he knew nothing more as his consciousness left him. Izuku awoke with a groan. Why did his jaw hurt so? Now he remembers. Surge did tell him, after all. Electabuzz does in fact fight dirty. He found out the hard way after all. Getting attacked while your guard's down is a dirty move. He attempted to sit up, but dropped back onto his mattress when the pain in his head hit him. The pain that settled around his head elicited a groan from him. What the hell? Why does it hurt? He groaned out his question, not expecting a response. But surprises happen. You got knocked the F out. Surge's voice caused him to jump up startled. Sadly, that only made the throbbing in his head become worse. He immediately fell back onto the bed, clutching his head and groaning. Surge's embarrassed chuckles only served to grate on his nerves. To be honest, this is kind of my bad. Should have told Electabuzz to take it easy on ya. We live and we learn, though. He barely managed to catch the grin Surge sent his way. He shot a glare at Surge in response, or tried to at least. The pain kind of made any other facial expression beyond a grimace hard to do. Despite his throbbing head and willingness to get up, he could feel himself drifting back to sleep. The corners of his vision were darkening, and despite his efforts, he could feel himself slipping. While he wasn't sure if Surge's lowered voice was because of him falling asleep or Surge actually being quiet for once, he was sadly unable to hear what came out his mouth as his vision went black. He woke up to the crowing of a rooster. No, that isn't right. It's Pokemon now. Sitting up, he noticed the throbbing in his head had practically disappeared overnight, only noticeable when he was looking for it. Looking around the room, he noticed a pair of clothes on the dresser across from the bed. The door opened a crack, indicating that someone had left them there for him. Getting up, he made his way to the door, closing it, before shedding his previous clothing and donning the clean set. They weren't anything special, simply being a plain pair of black shoes, jeans, and a plain black shirt. After getting dressed, he made his way towards the kitchen. On his little jaunt, he heard the sounds of battle in the distance. At first, he tensed but quickly relaxed upon recalling that there were training grounds somewhat close by. Before he began moving again, he felt a heavy hand clasp around his shoulder. Before he could react, he heard Surge's voice speak. There you are. I want to check up on you a second ago, and you were gone. He gave him a quick look before smiling. Headache gone, ain't it? Thought you got a concussion. BSDRD isn't as careful as he should be. Izuku opened his mouth to speak, but was quickly cut off. Hold up a second. Let me finish Glass Jaw. He ignored the annoyance that surged through his body at the nickname. Surge either not caring or noticing carried on. So I was thinking, most people have Pokemon, and this gave me an idea to help you blend in. Surge started with a grin. His eyes widened at the implication. He wasn't going to do what he thought he was going to do, right? His attention was drawn over to Surge as he began to dig for something in his pockets. After a couple of seconds of fumbling around, his eyes lit up in joy and pulled out a round object from within. There, catch. He tossed the ball over to Izuku, who almost dropped it before catching it. He stared at it with wide eyes. Did you just give me a Pokemon? He asked. Surge shot him a confused look. What? No. Press the button twice. Izuku's face flushed red with embarrassment as he stuttered out an apology and did as he was told. Click. The first click of the button caused the Pokeball to grow to a bigger size in his hand. He would have to learn how to do that later. Click. The second click, however, opened up the ball, and a white beam of energy spawned a Pokemon in between him and Surge. It appeared to be a little yellow Pokemon that had an odd-shaped head. Kinda appeared like the plugs for an outlet. And that kid is an Elekid. It's the baby version of my Electabuzz and Electivire. He's going to be helping you out. The little Pokemon looked between the two people curiously. The Pokemon finally cut into the conversation, waving one hand at each of them. Surge just grinned and crouched down and roughly patted Elekid's head with a fond smile. Hey, little dude, we're going to go battle some wild Mons. Want to come with us? The little Pokemon's eyes lit up with excitement before nodding and running around Izuku and Surge. Izuku chuckled at the Pokemon's energy while Surge just watched with a smile on his face. As Surge started to walk off with Elekid behind, Izuku started to follow along. Izuku stopped when his stomach growled and chuckled, embarrassedly garnering both Surge's and Elekid's attention. Sorry, I was going to get something to eat before you found me. The blonde reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar before tossing it to him. If you're still hungry, we can get something to eat on the way back. The trio made their way towards Route 11, east of Vermilion City. As they walked, Surge explaining the city layout and the nearby routes, Elekid was animatedly viewing the new sights of the city. It was very insightful for Izuku. Learning the location of the city he was staying in would definitely help him in the long run. He intently listened as Surge gave him a rundown of the city. And here is the Pokemart, and if you head south, it isn't too far from the ports. But if we keep walking over here for another 5 minutes give or take, we'll hit Route 11. Izuku nodded in understanding. The rest of their trip wasn't eventful. It consisted of idle conversation for the final 5 minutes of their journey. That is until they made it to Route 11. Okay, we're finally here. Careful. Even though the Pokemon here ain't the toughest, they can be a beach at times. Surge warned as Elekid nodded in agreement. Izuku nodded and continued walking forward before a question entered his mind. Excuse me, Surge. How are we exactly going to battle wild Pokemon? Do we just look around for one, L looking for a fight? Or do we CH challenge one? He face-faulted at Surge's response. Dunno. I was thinking of just wandering around until we got into a fight. They both stared at the man as he grinned, unperturbed at the expressions on their faces. Come on, move. Let's get moving. We got SHD to do. He gestured for the two to follow him as he trudged further into the route. They followed close behind due to their inexperience with their surrounding terrain. It shouldn't take too long to find another Pokemon, alright. As soon as the words left Izuku's mouth, he cringed. He probably jinxed them, didn't he? Turns out, he didn't jinx them as bad as he thought he would. Sure, they spent another half-hour walking before deciding to turn back, but that's unimportant. On the way back, they found a Pokemon fight. It was a strange fight, to be sure. 3 fox-like Pokemon. What were the species again? Volpine. No, it was something else. While he wasn't able to identify the trio of Pokemon, he was able to identify the other, an Abra. The sight had him giddy. During his very minimal research into the Pokemon world so far, between the study of his region, it was essential to learn of the terrain that he would be traversing for the foreseeable future. While most of his time so far was spent in the region of Kanto, he did find some time to look into some of its native species. The Abra line was one of the species he was intrigued by. Great intelligence and telekinetic abilities for both defense and offense. It was a perfect team member for his travels. While its physical abilities weren't up to par with the rest of its impressive attributes, they were still capable of being put to good use. Its close-range attacks were versatile and very intriguing. He looked over at Elekid, both locking eyes. Elekid nodded in excitement, a barely contained grin across his face as he bounced from one foot to the other in excitement. If he had to guess Elekid's answer, he would guess he is down to fight. He switched his glance from the excitable Pokemon to Surge, who simply nodded at his silent question. He smiled as he bent down to Elekid and whispered into his ear, "Don't rush in yet. Just observe for now, we have time." Elekid looked at him strangely, but nodded, agreeing to listen to his instructions nonetheless. He stood back and watched the fight alongside his current partner. Once he saw his partner agree, he shifted his gaze back towards the ongoing battle. The trio of FO Pokemon, Vulpix's mind finally supplied, were working as a team to attempt to bring down the Abra. Every time the little psychic created some distance with teleport, the trio of Vulpix would take turns bombarding the Pokemon with embers, while enveloping themselves in what he guessed was quick attack to close the distance. Izuku watched a bit longer, curious about the Abra's plan. A Pokemon as smart as Abra would surely have a plan in motion, right? Almost as if the universe was calling his bluff, one of the fox Pokemon broke from their formation, ignoring the cries of the one that appeared to be their leader, and sprinted far ahead of the others. The other two refrained from firing embers, wary of their friend being caught in the crossfire. As a rogue Pokemon neared the Abra, it stood just as the Vulpix lunged at him, slipping the dive and driving a fist bathed in dark orange energy into the Pokemon's side, eliciting a yelp of pain from the fox. Strange enough, the Abra seemed to perk up after the hit, seeming a bit more energetic. He turned back to Surge with scrunched eyebrows. What was that attack? The Abra seems better after it. Surge didn't say anything for a moment while being shocked. Huh, Not something you see every day. He cleared his throat and continued. That was a move that's pretty uncommon for the Abra line. Only could be gotten through breeding. He noticed Izuku looked slightly put off by where he was going and interjected before the brat could stop him. Or relax you pansy, I ain't gonna explain the F details. That SHD ain't my style. He had to fight off the smirk as he saw Izuku let out a sigh of relief. What you saw him use was a move called Drain Punch. Useful move, pain in the butt to teach too. Izuku smiled as he thought of the usefulness of an attack, taking the opponent's energy and dealing damage in return. Priceless. He smiled when he saw the Abra quickly grab a hold of the downed Vulpix and use it as a shield against another one of the foxes as they tried to ram into him with quick attack. As the fox bashed and tried to stop before it slammed into its friend. It was too late, however, as he slammed into its friend's side and sent the floating fox into one of the surrounding trees. They watched in surprise as the Vulpix who stayed behind managed to hit Abra with an ember, which caused the little guy to cry out in pain before he teleported away. The Vulpix who managed to land the hit barked something to the other before it charged back at the Abra who seemed to glow with white energy. DMN, that run special. He heard Surge comment from his behind him. He kept his eyes locked on the fight as Abra was forced to stop what it was doing and teleport away to avoid an ember that was fired at him. What do you mean? He was interested in what Surge had to say. Most Abra don't learn recover until they evolve. The little F-er is good. He could hear the genuine surprise in Surge's voice. Must be rare for Abra to do. As the Abra and Vulpix continued their back and forth, he noticed that the other Vulpix continued dragging the downed fox away. He watched as it kept going, eventually disappearing from sight. Okay, he turned to Elekid to make sure he had his attention before continuing. Let's go. This is as fair as a fight we're going to get anytime soon. Let's go before the other Vulpix come back. Elekid nodded before running into the clearing and announcing his presence with a battle cry. Both the Abra and Vulpix momentarily stopped their back and forth to turn and watch as the electric type ran into the clearing. Abra took advantage of the momentary distraction and renewed his effort to recover. Vulpix turned back to the conniving Pokemon, but was forced to pay attention to the electric type as she heard its trainer make a command. Elekid used Thundershock. Both Pokemon reacted instantly, both putting distance from their previous location. Vulpix dove away as Abra teleported to an unknown location. Where Vulpix previously stood, a flash of a thin stream of electricity lanced forward into the ground, leaving a scorch mark. Izuku, seeing an opportunity, had Elekid push forward, getting close with quick attack and ice punch. Elekid ran forward with quick attack, barely missing the Vulpix when it scampered away with its own quick attack. While he had gotten in close as he had wanted, his own inexperience and nerves had caused his plan to fail. The delayed commands and Elekid's inexperience with the move Ice Punch didn't allow it enough time to form the energy around his fists as he was pushed back with a few embers that left him stumbling away to avoid the next volley that followed. Izuku's eyes widened as he watched his partner get hurt due to his incompetence. Use Thundershock again. Electricity began to dance around the protrusions on Elekid's head and traveled down to his left arm as he shot the thin stream of electricity forward with a simple thought. Vulpix dodged the following bolts so she danced around them, returning the fire. Literally. He winced once again as he saw a few of the embers launched forward and hit their marks, resulting in grunts of pain from Elekid, finally coming to the conclusion that he couldn't win if he kept his distance. Getting close and use Ice Punch. His command came out loud for Elekid to hear, eliciting a nod as he avoided another burst of embers. He was once again enveloped in a bright light as he sped forward, his fist glowing a pale blue as he forced ice energy into it. This time, however, he managed to land a hit punching the Vulpix in the side, sending it sliding away. It cried out in pain before its eyes started glowing blue with power. In response to the sudden showing, Elekid suddenly froze in place, unable to move. 3 seconds. In 3 seconds, that's all it took for his partner to get enshrouded by a spire of fire. He could hear Elekid's cries and Surge cursing as he reached for his Pokeball, but that didn't matter. He knew he needed help. Strands of rogue energy began to dance around his skin as he raced forward, not hearing Surge yelling at him to get back. He ran towards the fire, throwing a punch. He knew he could rid of the fire for a moment. That's all he would need to get Ellicott out after all. The low output of his quirk wouldn't matter in this instance, as the spiral of fire was weak. It wobbled weakly as it spun around Ellicott. Despite its inherent weakness, it was still fire, a very hot, continuous stream of fire. Pulling his right arm back as he punched the flames closest to him were immediately blown out. His right arm continued to move forward, grabbing Ellicott's arm and pulling him out. His effort was rewarded with a burning pain meeting his face and arm, however, when the spiral continued to spin, burning his arm where they intersected. The residual heat didn't do him any favors as well, burning his face and causing his eyes to water. His yell of pain echoed within the forest as he pulled Ellicott out of the spiral, freeing his arm from the burning pain. As soon as he did, he turned back and threw Ellicott at the recently released Electivire, who caught him effortlessly, not wasting any time. He circled the now dissipating flames spiral and ran towards the Vulpix, who stood there frozen in surprise and mild fear. As he got closer to the fox, it turned tail and tried to run. Tried being the central part. Before it could make it out of his reach, he grabbed it by one of its tails, eliciting a yelp from the Pokemon, and swung it over his head in the ground. Hearing it cry out in pain didn't deter him, however, as he quickly let go of its tail and grabbed its torso before pulling his arm back and slamming the fox into a tree that was nearby. Just as he raised his fist, he stopped. The Pokemon was knocked out, its head dropped forward, its tails and legs following suit. He released a breath and quickly lowered the fox onto the ground before rushing to check on Ellicott. Is he all right? He nervously asked Surge. Surge stared for a moment in surprise before finally answering his question. Wow. Your little dude's fine. I'm going to put him in his ball. Make sure he doesn't get any worse. He added before Ellicott disappeared in a flash of light, Surge clipping the ball back onto his belt. At the inquisitive look on Izuku's face, Surge explained himself. Dunno if you read that far yet, but Pokeballs kind of hold the Pokemon in stasis or something. Don't know the specifics, not into all that nerdy SHD. He nodded before running back to the downed fox and picking it up, not noticing it subtly open its eye crack, watching him carry it gently. You taking the fox with ya? He responded immediately to Surge's question. Yes, I can't leave it to here alone. His voice didn't waver or crack once. His shift in demeanor and attitude was kind of strange, but looking at it now, this was how he needed to be. Confident and commanding. Surge came to the conclusion that he would have to force his anxiety out of him, not wasting any time the both of them back through the forest and towards the city. His display of power the day before and now was impressive. Super impressive. Surge had to admit it was badass, seeing the kid casually stand toe-to-toe with the A's for his 3-badge team. Then seeing him easily dispose of the Vulpix only seemed to hammer the point in. This kid was going to be near godlike if he managed to gain control over his superpower. He didn't give a SHD if it was called Quirk. It was a stupid name, and he wasn't going to call it that. That is if he was truly using 5% like he mentioned he was. The little SHD obviously isn't formally trained for combat yet. He could see the foundations in place, his footwork, instincts, reactions. It was all still rough and undefined. He would have to fix it later, of course, but right now, he was content to let him continue physically train and study up on this world. The knowledge would be more useful at the moment. After all, knowledge is power and all that. He may have panicked just a little. Ellicott was going to be fine. He just had some burns and bruises and was knocked out. The Vulpix, on the other hand, he may have gone overboard. He cracked a few of its ribs. Not only that, but he bruised it pretty badly and gave it a concussion. While it relieved him to know that the fox was going to be all right, he still felt like SHD. He was the one who hurt the Vulpix that badly in the first place. He didn't need to be as rough with the fox as he was. In a moment, he knew that he went overboard, but couldn't bring it upon himself to care. His fists were burning. It was strange. It was as if something was below the skin, fighting to break out. That feeling took control, an anger that wasn't his, fueling his actions, causing him to ignore his strength, the power he poured behind each blow. He needed to find out what caused it. He couldn't allow something like this to happen again. He checked in on Ellicott later that day. After they treated his arm, applying a modified potion to the burns and wrapping them up, they sent him off. Surge took him around Vermilion City for lunch while they were waiting for Ellicott to get treated. Walking around the city was enjoyable for him. Viewing the different sights, learning of places, and just walking around was nice. It was also necessary to learn the city he would be living in for the foreseeable future. He wouldn't leave until Surge or Nurse Joy deemed him knowledgeable enough about the world. He wouldn't want to break a law or something due to his lack of knowledge. One of the places in the city also garnered his attention: the Pokemon Fan Club. When he asked Surge about it, he said it was a place where people talked about their favorite Pokemon. Maybe it would be useful to help learn about the different species. He wouldn't mind the extra conversation with natives of this world. Plus, he was intrigued by the uniqueness of the Pokemon. If he could get more to join him, not just on his adventure, but to his world, he could become an amazing hero with their help. He couldn't stop the small smile spread across his lips as he thought about the potential for all their abilities and traits. Analysis has always been a hobby for him, and this world gave him so much to work with. Despite the worries buried and hidden in his gut by the novelties of this world, he couldn't fight the childlike giddiness he felt. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku's Quirk shocked the Pokemon world. A big thanks to youngposum for creating such an amazing story. Don't forget to visit their profile on fanfiction.net and say hello. If you liked the video, then do subscribe to the channel for amazing content. Thank you, and see you soon in the next video.